Weather Service, Muskegon.
Hi, Muskegon. This is Ottawa County 911 calling.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. You guys have access to a radar there, don't you?
Yes, we do.
You do. You getting anything weird down in the southern Ottawa County area?
Anything weird? Hold on for a second.
Okay.
On March 8, 1994, a meteorologist in Muskegon, Michigan named Jack Bushong received a strange call from a 911 dispatcher in a nearby county. The dispatcher told him that dozens of people had been calling about mysterious lights they were seeing in the sky over Lake Michigan. Could Bushong check the radar and see if it was some kind of bizarre weather event? Witnesses are seeing 5 or 6 objects, some cylindrically shaped, circled with blue, red, white, and green lights, the dispatcher told Bushong. We've had reports from South Holland and over in northern Allegan County. Lots of lights moving all over the place. Bushong looked, and what he saw would forever change his life, as well as the lives of some 300 witnesses on the ground. The so-called 1994 Lake Michigan UFO Incident, during which hundreds of people reported seeing inexplicable objects in the night sky, stands as one of the most curious UFO sightings in American history. On that spring night, hundreds of witnesses, campers, people inside their homes, police officers, and pilots reported seeing the same thing, a string of lights in the sky almost like Christmas tree lights splayed across the inky darkness. Meanwhile, things got even weirder once Bushong studied his radar screen. There, a single object caught his eye, moving at a speed of about 100 miles per hour. It zigged and zagged, shooting up tens of thousands of feet as Bushong watched in awe. As the 911 dispatcher on the line confirmed that they were seeing the same thing, the object on Bushong's radar screen went still, and then flew up, and he had the eerie feeling that it knew he was watching. It was almost as if it was like it was saying to me, "Hey, I know you can see me," he later recalled. Then, Bushong started noticing more objects like it. On the ground, other witnesses watched the lights for up to half an hour. The lights changed colors between white and green and red. They sometimes clustered together or broke off into small groups. Bushong remembers seeing a triangle of objects on his radar screen, and 2 pilots who spotted the objects later described them as very bright and cylindrical entities that were moving at a phenomenal rate of speed as they flew above Michigan's sprawl of lakes. But to this day, the 1994 Lake Michigan UFO incident remains unexplained. And it's not the first time that something strange and inexplicable has happened over the Great Lakes. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the world past. I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga.
And I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Austin Harvey.
Today, we're delving into the second episode in our series on UFOs with the story of the so-called 1994 Lake Michigan UFO Incident.
We're getting a whole bunch of calls of some strange lights.
Strange light?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at it in the vertical now, and I'm not really... Let's see, wait a minute, there's something right there. Could have been a plane. I don't know, but it was pretty big.
We're getting a bunch of weird ones down there, and like I say, now it's starting to... appears to be moving a little bit south.
Yeah, there's something big down there. Wait a minute, that's really strange. It's moving.
For people who listened last week to our episode on Kelly Hopkinsville, this one bears some resemblance, but it's also pretty different. It's similar in the way that multiple people said they saw things.
Yeah, different in that nobody shot at them.
Nobody shot at them. Nobody, well, I was going to say nobody saw any aliens, but actually there were some, I guess, reported alien abductions around the same time. But in any case, so we're in Michigan, it's 1994. Suddenly people started seeing in March all these lights in the sky over 200 miles of shoreline. And the funny thing is that people, have telephones now, so they're calling each other and
telling
each
we can
other
set
what
the
they're
scene
seeing.
a bit like 1994. You got your landline phone.
Exactly.
Dial-up is starting to break onto the scene. Nintendo's put out some of its most successful game consoles of all time. Mario Brothers. We're talking arcade culture's come and gone. We're 3 years away from the first Men in Black movie releasing in theaters.
The world
UFOs
is totally different.
are everywhere. Over a decade after E.T.'s released, grunge is in. Nirvana, Nevermind, just came out.
Obviously, this is decades after Roswell. Aliens are in the zeitgeist.
Right.
So Then, amidst this very interesting cultural period, people started seeing these lights in the sky, and they started calling each other and telling each other about it. One woman tells her friend, I got UFOs in the backyard, and she sees, it's so like matter of fact, it's like, hey, Nancy,
I love it.
Guess what?
They interviewed her on Netflix's Unsolved Mysteries. Like,
oh, yeah, because they
recently,
covered this. They covered this, and you wrote the article about this.
I did write the article about this on the website as well, yeah.
Oh, good. You're an expert.
She literally was just like, yeah, I called her and I said, hold on, I think I got UFOs in my yard. It's like, it's so matter of fact. It's amazing.
I love that. Yeah. She says that she sees 4 lights that look like full moons, and she watches them for half an hour, just kind of like floating back and forth. Odd thing to see. But people all over the region were seeing the exact same thing. Lights in the sky, red, white, and moving. Lights going in a circle, red, blue, white, green, and yellow. Basically the same thing all over Michigan.
My great uncle has a very similar story about watching he was not in Michigan. No, I don't know what year this happened. I just remember him telling me as a kid that he saw 2 balls of light dancing around in the sky.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Really? Just get your uncle on the podcast.
We don't talk to him since the last election.
Okay. Okay. No, too bad. Well, in any case, people on the ground are seeing these lights. People in the sky are seeing these lights. 2 pilots who have remained anonymous claim they saw these cylindrical objects moving very quickly in the sky. And then, what do you do when you see something frightening? You might call the police, which is what people did. Right,
of course.
Hundreds of people called the police about this. One person said, I feel kind of silly calling. And another person said, he said, I don't know if you guys do anything on UFOs at all, but I got the real one. They're out there. They ain't airplanes.
Yeah, you can listen to all those calls, too. They have recordings of them available online.
That's one of the amazing things about this is, like, unlike Kelly Hopkinsville, there are recordings of, like, all this stuff. People took video footage of it, too, but it's 1994, so it's not, like, great. Yeah. So after getting, like, a bunch of these calls, one dispatcher named Jeff Veldhouse calls the National Weather Service, which I guess makes sense. If people are calling about weird stuff in the sky, you might just see...
Like, hey, what's going on up there? You guys got... Is there like some storm, like weird ball lightning?
Yeah, I mean, there could be some sort of weather event or like something with planets or stars. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe just like, hey, they have radar. Is there anything up? Like, are there pilots flying around right now that like we don't know about?
Totally. Yeah. So I think it makes sense. He took the logical next step to try to like check in and explain this.
Totally. Yeah.
So he calls a meteorologist named Jack Bushong and says, people are calling in and telling us about these strange objects. And I think their whole recording or their whole conversation is recorded.
It is, yeah.
And it's funny, at first, the dispatcher says, we've had about 60 UFO calls. And Bushong goes, oh, geez, like, oh, God. Something I have to check out.
I'm sorry, I hear you, brother.
But then he starts looking at the radar screen, going from like, believing this is really silly to being like, oh my God, what is this?
Right, you can hear his reactions in real time as he's like, at first just, all right, let me take a look.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah, just like you just can't believe it.
He tells the dispatcher of Veldhouse, he says they're forming a triangle, and he says, I've never seen anything like this, not even when I'm doing storms. These aren't storms.
Some big ass geese.
Yes.
What the heck? Like making formations and stuff.
Yeah. He's spoken publicly about this now. At the time, he stayed quiet.
Right.
But he says he sees these objects hovering and jumping really fast. They get up to 60,000 feet, which I guess people thought they were ground clutter.
Oh, yeah.
Which they would not have gotten that high if they were.
Right. And the fact that they were jumping around so much, too. 6,000.
Yeah, and so
like
quickly,
you don't just move 6,000 feet.
Yeah. He calls an FAA control tower. And they say they detected 3 aircrafts without transponder codes. I imagine pre 9/11, this I guess wasn't as alarming as it might have been today. Yeah. But they was like, yeah, there's some aircrafts out there without transponder codes.
I can see it moving, and it's just moved. It's moving towards the west-southwest, and it looks like a big blob.
Yeah, that's the way it was explained to us.
I think it's almost off the scope. Let me go to another.
This is weird.
Yeah, I've never seen... Now I'm getting multiple returns.
One of of the people that called that I had happened to talk to said it looked like a bunch of cylindrical objects.
Oh my God, what is this?
That were going together and coming apart.
So, yeah, no one knows what it was. And like I said, he didn't speak about it for decades. He thought people would think he was like insane if he spoke about it. And he was really upset when he found out that this conversation had been recorded because it makes him sound like he's losing his mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, take a look at what happened with Kelly Hopkinsville, where people got like ostracized from their community.
Right.
Granted, it's 40 years earlier, but still, like, up until I'd say now, if you were a person who claimed to see UFOs, you were considered crazy.
I think now there's still a chance you'd be considered crazy.
There's a very strong chance, but
unless
at least now,
you have
like,
footage.
Yeah, now Navy pilots and stuff are saying it too, though. So it's like
right
on record. So it's a little bit more credible.
Yeah, and I can see how he is like someone with a scientific mindset, I would think, as a meteorologist.
Yeah,
would not want to be associated with this. But at the same time, it's not like Kelly Hopkinsville was 11 people. This is hundreds of people saw this.
Across the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
And like the surrounding region. I mean, this is not even just in Michigan. This is just around Lake Michigan. So people from other states were also seeing this. People in like Chicago and
Yeah, people saw it over the next couple of days, like moving north, more and more sightings like came out.
Yeah. And people who had like no connection to each other and had nothing to gain from it. It's not like.
Right. Well, in the moment, it's not like 300 people were like, let's all call 911 and say we saw these lights. You know, they were distant from each other and they just reacted the way you might react when you see something strange in the sky.
Yeah.
They've since determined that it was not a weather balloon or a small plane or marsh gas or an advertising blimp or a satellite or a falling star or a helicopter or space debris or a military aircraft.
That's everything.
That's everything. Although,
that's everything else.
As a general skeptic, I do feel like if it was a military aircraft, the military might not have said it was military aircraft, you know?
True.
They do have a record of not saying the truth sometimes about things like this.
I'm fairly certain at one point they were actively, during the Cold War, encouraging rumors about UFOs because it skewed the public perception and like hid what they were doing.
Well, I mean, we touched on Roswell in the last episode, and that's basically what happened.
Right.
I mean, they said it was a weather balloon, but like they didn't want anyone to find out about this Project Mogul they were working on there. So they were like, yeah, whatever, you go ahead and have confusion. And
yeah, sure, it's UFOs. Whoa, crazy.
Yeah, meanwhile, working on these projects.
Right.
Keeping the Soviets in the dark.
Right. But now, I mean, we're talking nearly 30 years after the event, and we still haven't seen, I mean, other than stuff that's been captured on video. And I think that's why it's important now that, like, people within the military, like Navy pilots and Air Force pilots and other people are coming out and saying, like, hey, I got this thing on camera. I'm not aware of any of our technology that can do this.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, like, if at some point in the past 50 years we've developed the ability to make transportation for military purposes that can rapidly move 6,000 feet in the blink of an eye and uses a propulsion system that isn't like fossil fuel based, maybe we should be making like airplanes that can do that too, so we can stop relying on fossil fuels for everything.
Yeah. I mean, like in 94, I was thinking like, well, drones can move pretty fast and change direction and everything. Yeah. Not at this point in time.
And not that many of them.
Yeah. Right.
That they were, I mean, these things were bright. Like therones even now aren't like solar flares going up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very mysterious. They said, I guess there's an organization, the Mutual UFO Network, and their Michigan chapter said they received a lot of UFO calls in 1994, 10 to 15 sightings a day. So eerie.
Yeah.
A hot
and
spot.
Even if only half of those were legitimate, or even like a third of them, it's still a ton of people calling in over the course of 1 year.
By legitimate, do you mean like people who actually saw aliens, or people who
actually think they actually, people who weren't calling in as a prank.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder how many prank calls they get.
Yeah, because I'm sure there were definitely people who were like, let's do this. Like,
yeah,
they throw on a Pearl Jam record and smoke a little weed and they're like, oh, we should call him MUFON. That'd be so funny.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw an alien in my backyard. It kind of looked like your mom.
And they're like, oh, great.
Yeah. Another one.
It does kind of remind me of, I was going to bring it up in our last episode and then I forgot, but in like 1639 and 1644, like some Puritans saw lights in the sky and they didn't know what it was. And it's also it's unexplained because it was so long ago and like who knows what they saw. Maybe like a really bright, I don't know, star or planet or something. But they also saw lights in the sky, which feels sort of connected to this like
Yeah. I think especially too, I think part of the issue with all of this is like the very large perception that like we are not ready or equipped as a species to handle information that could fundamentally change our worldview. Especially more so in like 1693, you said it was a group of Puritans. I'm sure they thought it was some sort of religious symbol.
They didn't know what it was. Yeah.
The default explanation. Even today, there are people who are like, with the ongoing UFO hearings, which we will talk about, people who are still claiming that, it couldn't possibly be extraterrestrials. It's got to be demons.
Interesting. This makes me think, this is so like not related at all to aliens, but if you've read like War and Peace or seen the musical, I think, about Natasha, and one like theme in the book is about there's like a red comet like slowly crossing the sky during the book. And it's sort of symbolic of the war and also like all these like love affairs that are going on in the book. And I guess I just bring that up because I think people look to the sky for signs.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's only in the last century I would maybe say that people have been like, oh, it's aliens and not like, oh, like I think you said like a religious sign or something.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, solar eclipses have had very important symbolic associations throughout history. You look at something like Stonehenge, which is kind of like a big sundial in a way. So or the Nazca lines.
What's that?
They're these massive lines that are effectively just like traces of constellations.
Oh, that's cool.
But the really, really neat thing is like they make very distinct images, very distinct pictures, but they were only discovered within the past century because the advent of like commercial flight became a thing.
Oh.
So you could only see the images that these things made from the air.
Wow.
Yet these ancient civilizations made them.
Huh. That's fascinating.
Yeah. I'm not going to go full Ancient Aliens and say it was that, but I just think it's very interesting how people looked to the sky and thought to recreate what they saw.
Yeah.
In a way that wasn't even visible to them. They didn't know if they were getting it right.
We should talk about Ancient Aliens maybe in the last episode because there's like some interesting stuff there. Yeah.
There is definitely interesting stuff there. It gets, I will tease right now. I know of this now defunct website, but you can find it on archive.org. It was called truthism.com, a very crappily made HTML website with like bright green text, or I think maybe bright blue, whatever, black background, really low quality, like JPEGs. That you can, it's funny if you go through all the different like archive screenshots, you can see it get more and more unhinged. But it talks about like ancient aliens and the Anunnaki and how they live. These reptilians live at the center of the earth and they're slowly influencing and controlling humanity, and that half the people who exist are not real people and they're like puppets for these things. And if you take the red pill and wake up from the Matrix, and then it starts to get really misogynistic at one point because of course it does. Yeah. It's just like, it's a really fun, unhinged deep dive. But I didn't know the first time I read it, like back in like 2011. And then more recently for the other podcast I do, I was talking about it. I didn't realize the Anunnaki are actually a group of ancient Assyrian gods that were worshipped. So
yeah, I know we have an article about it and I can't remember it very well, but there's like, there's like alien stuff about them.
Yes, it's very strange
to get into. I wanted to touch on a couple of things that happened specifically in Michigan as like an alien hotspot.
Yeah, totally.
And actually, I mentioned in the last episode that I had a story about something from the 50s, and that's this thing that I'm going to talk about. In 1953, there was an unidentified object flying around in Upper Michigan, and the Air Force sent a jet to confront it. They could see the object was changing directions really fast, and the jet was traveling at 500 miles per hour. It was finally started closing in, and then the objects merged, and the jet disappeared. And it was never found. There's been no wreckage, no sign of the pilots. The Air Force initially said in a statement the jet was followed by radar until it merged with an object 70 miles off Keweenaw Point in Upper Michigan, and then later said that the radar control operator had made a mistake and that the jet probably crashed into the water below. So I think that's a really odd story and strange because it was A, close to Kelly Hopkinsville in terms of the timing, and B, in the same area of like Michigan, weird stuff in Michigan, and that they've never found it, and that it was chasing this object that seemed to be acting in a similar way, not only as the lights in Michigan, but also, as you said, like some of the more recent UFO sightings, fast changing directions and everything. So that's very strange.
As you were saying that, I had to like double check. I recently heard about this other pilot who went MIA mid-flight and reported UFO stuff, and I was like making sure I wasn't thinking of the exact same thing, and I'm not, because this story was Australian. This pilot, Frederick Valentich, went missing, and there's like a transcript of him saying that he saw an object circling him in the air. And then midway through his communications with the airbase, he just like cuts out and disappears. And a similar thing, they never found him or the wreckage.
Very eerie. Yeah. Vanishing pilots. I'm sure there's like tons of stuff out there that I don't know very much about, but I bet there's more incidences like that. And I mean, it is the kind of thing where like, yes, they could have crashed into the water. I think that's definitely a plausible explanation. But the fact that the ocean's big, the ocean or lakes or whatever, but the fact that they saw these things and then crashed. I mean, again, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to like justify, find logical explanations, but you know, they saw these things. Could that mean that they were having some sort of like problem, like some sort of brain problem or something? The one in Michigan, like the pilots were chasing something that they were told to chase. So that feels different, but.
And the fact that, I mean, they said that the radar person messed up, but that feels like one, an unnecessary throwing of under the busing.
Yes.
And two, like if it's, regardless if something's bizarrely showing up on radar, and like that's just corroborating evidence, right? That's just like further indicator that like something happened.
Yeah. It's very weird.
Or it's just a really inconvenient coincidence that somebody messed up looking at the radar the same day this plane mysteriously vanished, which like... Yeah. But like you said, what's the most simple explanation? That these two like strange coincidences happened at the same time to make this mystery, or he got abducted. Yeah. Those are the two options. I don't know. It's very weird. Yeah. The Lake Michigan UFO incident is very curious, though.
Just in terms of Michigan being like a place where strange things happen. In February of this year, 2023, the U.S. shot down a UFO, which we never really heard much about after that happened. I think this was around the same time as like the Chinese weather balloon, and suddenly there were like a bunch of UFOs. I mean, not meaning like aliens, but unidentified flying objects that were getting shot down around the U.S. So this one got shot down and kind of like disappeared from the news, but I think it's interesting that it was in the same sort of area as these other events. Especially
like what's going on in Michigan.
Yeah. Very odd.
Sufjan Stevens, tell us.
Tell us.
Yeah, no, it's getting harder and harder to keep track of UFO and UAP sightings because it's becoming more and more, one, talked about because people are less afraid of like being publicly ostracized about stuff, I think, for the most part. And the fact that we are in like such a highly communicative technology age where you can instantly send video, like high quality, good video from your phone while you're on an airplane to somebody. Like, that's insane.
It's a really interesting point because, like we mentioned, people did take videos of the Lake Michigan incident in 1994, but there was no way to quickly and easily upload this onto the internet, share
tape. It was like 480p, if that. So it was very low quality. So if you see a light in the sky on one of these old videos, just looks like a light in the sky. It doesn't look like anything.
Well, and I mean, if this had happened today, this would be online immediately.
Oh my God, yeah.
Instantaneous. People would be live streaming it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which would, I don't know if that would give it more weight, or just within the noise of the internet, give it like less weight, kind of like.
Yeah, especially with like AI and deepfake technology. And
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But that all depends like where it's posted and how many people are posting. Because if it's on 300 people's Instagram stories and they're all like disconnected, and you can verify like, hey, this person doesn't, like, there's just like a teenager who posts like selfies. They're not maybe skilled in like computer graphics, and you see them posting the same thing as somebody else, but it's all from a different. It would be, I think, significantly more believable.
Yeah, I think that would get some attention for sure.
It also makes it harder when you don't have evidence now, if you come forward and say something, because it's like, hey, you have a supercomputer in your pocket, like always.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You need the receipts.
Yes. You need the alien receipts.
They're very strong returns. I'm getting they're spiking, so there's something pretty solid. It's not precipitation or anything, especially up at that height.
Yeah. An officer in the Holland City just sent me a message. He says, can we identify anything further? He says it looks like 3 to 4 of them.
I'm seeing 3. I'm seeing 3, and they're separated by. They look like a triangle on my scope. These are huge returns. I've never seen anything like this. Not even when I'm doing storms. These aren't storms. They're just popping up all over the place.
This is strange, yeah, because the officer says it's green and red lights. It does not look like an airplane.
Okay.
They come together and then they separate, and they just keep doing this all the time.
I think his response is like one of the most like telling things about this story. Just the meteorologist's disbelief into like, wait, what? I don't know. That part's eerie.
Yeah, even if you want to be skeptical about it and say that it wasn't aliens, which is fine. There's no conclusive proof one way or another about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, hearing his reaction is like, okay, well, something weird was going on.
Something's in this guy. Yeah, and no one knows what it is. It's like Kelly Hopkinsville. I mean, it's almost not like Kelly Hopkinsville, because Kelly Hopkinsville was like, oh, it could have been like owls or drunk people. And this one's like, well, it wasn't this, or this.
Right. And they know that.
So like, what could it be then?
Yeah. It's not like everybody in Michigan was drunk and owls were flying in the sky.
Yeah, exactly. Brightly colored owls zooming back and forth. Yeah. So this one I think is definitely an odd one. I
think this one and the one we're going to talk about next are maybe 2 of the most believable stories I've heard.
I have some thoughts about the next one.
I'm sure you do.
We'll get into it.
This one I think is a little bit more credible, I will say.
Well, it's so many people spread out.
And the way the information was gathered was handled a little bit better.
Yes, for sure.
There are definitely some holes to be poked in the handling of the aerial school phenomenon. Yeah, but the interesting thing is that the aerial school UFO incident took place in Rua, Zimbabwe, which is like a very small kind of rural community in Zimbabwe. One of the women who interviewed the children who said they witnessed this event also described that they were like not just isolated in terms of where they were physically located, but isolated in like a cultural sense as well, that these weren't like American children who were hanging out in malls and seeing like a bunch of movies and stuff. She said like a lot of them might not even have had televisions in their homes. And so they weren't as involved in the cultural zeitgeist surrounding aliens and UFOs. And so that to me makes their experience very, very interesting.
Yeah, we'll get into that next. Another kind of strange, dozens of people seeing something very odd at this time in Zimbabwe. Yes. So we'll do that. We'll do that next week, episode 3, our UFO series.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. As always, we have many, many things written on the website specifically about this. You mentioned earlier, I wrote the Lake Michigan UFO Incident article for allthisinteresting.com. It's one of my favorite things I got to write. I was so excited when they got assigned to me.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good one. It's very interesting. Yeah, so you can check out the site. If you want to be part of the newsletter, keep up to date with us, you could do that by going to altinteresting.com/sign up or becoming a member at altinteresting.com/membership. as always, we'd love to hear from you. You can call us. You can email us. Give us a call at 929-526-3029 or email at podcast@allthisinteresting.com. And we would love to hear from you. Alien stories, history stories, whatever.
Yeah, general thoughts on any of these incidents that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have a relative in Michigan in the 90s who saw this.
Or an aunt or uncle from Kentucky who might have shot at some goblins one time.
Yeah, we want to hear about it.
We didn't really entertain it last time, but what if, and this is my own theory, what if the Kelly Hopkinsville incident really was goblins?
Yeah, that's a hot take.
We're very focused on was it aliens or something on Earth? But no one's talking about the goblins.
It could have been a Kentucky cryptid, for all we know.
They're out there.
Yes.
The goblins are out there, and I've got my tinfoil yarmulke on.
Amazing. Yeah,
I didn't
you're
want to
ready.
waste all the tinfoil.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, we'll talk to you next week about our next UFO encounter, this time in Zimbabwe.